Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Maree. I head up the waste team at Irwinconsult. We're an engineering practice that covers structural, civil, fire, facade, traffic, waste, and all building services. I spent 7 years at the City of Melbourne, and prior to that, I spent 5 years at the City of Moonee Valley, which is an inner urban council. And when I was at the City of Melbourne, I wrote the first 5 versions of the waste guidelines. You also know them in New South Wales and Queensland as policy or control documents. So I've worked on both sides of the table with developers. So I'm going to have a chat to you about that win-win. There is a win-win with developers and councils, both spatially and in cost. Okay. We're going to talk about some common issues, what needs to be considered in good design, and we're also going to look about best practice and what really needs to go into these document controls. But what happens when it goes wrong? This building is about 2 weeks old, and one of the waste contractors rang. I was at the City of Melbourne, and he said, "The room doesn't work." And I went, "Okay, what's wrong, Luca? What's wrong? I'll come down." And this building came in with a waste management plan that was put together after the building had been designed. It was pretty much completed in construction, and the body corporate decided, "I don't want to pay for a cleaner to put out bins 3 days a week." So they decided we'd just put them out twice. The room will fit, won't it? No. So when the residents, and this was a walk down, needed to bring their waste down, there obviously wasn't enough bins, the room wasn't big enough, and as an end result, people started putting it on the footpath, thinking somebody would run around and pick it up. Well, that doesn't happen. So it was really important that not only do you need to have a good design, but you need to work with your building managers. They need to understand what was required as part of your planning permit. This building isn't that tall. It's about 50 apartments, it's 20 garbage bins, 20 recycle bins. City of Melbourne picks them up both on a weekly basis. They're stacked 2 deep on the curb. This building is pre-2008. I arrived at council in 2008, and a building like this would ring up and say, "We're ready to be occupied, can we have our bins?" There was no opportunity to change the design, there was no opportunity to change the size of the room, there was no opportunity to change the bin configuration. So there are a lot of existing bins. So the first thing that I did back in 2008 was I wrote the book, What Do I Want Developers to Give Me? And I changed the planning rules to prior to development, you must submit a waste management plan and it must be approved. No more prior to occupation. But that takes time to come through the system. So I still had a legacy of applications that had permits that were under construction and were going to arrive one day and ring up and ask for bins. Okay, so what are the design considerations? Part of writing the first guidelines, it dawned on me that a 4-bedroom or a 3-bedroom apartment or a family home does not generate the same amount of waste as student accommodation, single person in a dorm. Nor does it generate the same waste of a 1 or 2 bedroom apartment, nor does it generate the same waste as an elderly couple in a retirement village. So I suggest that when you're looking at your planning controls, don't use the old rates. The Victorian government and the New South Wales government, that document was last written about 2005. It calls for 120 litres of garbage capacity and 60 litres of recycling capacity. 2005, yeah? Not now. So I really encourage you to look at your demographic, understand what your community generates, and make sure that's what you're requiring of developers. If I required every developer to put aside 120 litres of garbage no matter what size room, I would have enormous bin rooms. And that's not what we need. Okay. What waste streams? What are we really generating and how do we separate it out? Commingles, yeah, we know that. In 2010, any building that came to the City of Melbourne with more than 50 apartments, I required a charity bin. Why? Because building managers was telling me that people were trying to retrieve waste from under the chute, because people who move in and out of apartments, it's frequent. They move in, oh, new look, turf out my stuff down the chute, bags, shoes, housewares. Some of it had tags on it. If you've got a big student population, people move in and out. They get rid of the winter clothes because they're going back to a summer climate. They get rid of doonas, pillows. When they go down the chute, we have a bit of a mess. So it's really important that you understand that charity waste, so the reuse stream, should be in every single building that has more than 50 apartments. It's clean, it's not ratted through. The charities usually give you the bin free of charge, and it's a free service. This is a no-brainer. Hard waste. If every residential home is entitled to their 1 or 1.5 cubic metres per year at the curb, what does 500 apartments generate? Right? Anything over about 350, 400 apartments, they pretty much need a weekly hard waste collection from council. That's a lot of hard waste. But a fridge takes up your cubic metre. A mattress. Desks are a nightmare come October when the students go home. E-waste. At Irwinconsult, every waste management plan that we have designed for the last 18 months has an e-waste bin in it. It's banned in Victoria from landfill as of July 1 this year. But there are a lot of buildings out there that will not have space for this bin. If you have a look at the United Nations report on e-waste, Australasia produces somewhere in the order of 17 kilos per person per year of e-waste. It's about 4 times that of Asia. It's about double that of the US. We're early adopters. So e-waste bins should be a priority in your document controls. Cardboard, you can pick it up with your commingle truck, but you need somewhere for residents who move in and out to have somewhere to drop off large cardboard. Those IKEA flat packs, they're huge, those cardboard boxes. You can't rip them up, you can't put them down the chute. Have a safe room where your residents can come and drop off large cardboard. Organics, it's a challenge in high-rise. Anything over about 30 apartments, this is our new challenge moving forward. I have my own views on lots of solutions to this. I'm not going to go into that detail, but I'm more than happy if you come and chat to me offline. And of course, the last bin is your garbage bin. And it should be the last bin. But if we could separate out all of those others first, we should be able to get this down not to half. We should be looking at a third. But understand those generation rates and the bin sizes that you need. Okay, so what equipment do we put in bins? In the towers? Anything over 4 floors, twin chutes. No diverters, twin chutes. It's pretty straightforward, and it's one per tower. Carousels and sliding trays are really important because you don't want a building cleaner to stand at the bottom of the chute per hour. So if you've got 600 apartments with twin chutes, you can't just have a pair of bins. They will fill every hour, right? So you need to choose the right equipment. Give your developers and your engineers who are designing these buildings some flexibility to make sure that they have choice in the right equipment that goes down in those bin rooms. The other one is compactors, and I'm going to go into a bit more detail. We have buildings that we design that not only have twin chutes and then a carousel, so that holds a day's waste, but then we actually put it in compactors so that we're only picking it up once a week. It's important that you give people this flexibility. Okay, this is all starting to come together. What trucks are actually coming into these facilities? Single dwelling, yep, we know what a side loader is. What happens when you get over about 20 apartments? That's 40 bins, garbage plus recycle. You should be looking at combining into bigger bins and using rear loaders. Okay, let's get those bin numbers down. Let's get those truck numbers down. When we move into tall buildings, there's a combination of a rear loader or a hook lift truck picking up a compactor. So when we're doing a design, you're probably going, so do my control document, please, does it tip over at 400 apartments? Because when I wrote the book, I thought it was 400 apartments. City of Melbourne now requires a hook lift truck at 250 apartments. It's not a very big building. So where is that tipping point? The other thing that you really need to consider is access. Back to that same building that puts its bins out on the street, it actually puts them outside the neighbouring property, because that's not used at the moment, because they have a full activation on their property. It's on a corner, it's on a bike lane, it's collected with a rear loader, and it's going to block that bluestone laneway while it does it. You need to consider safety. What are you asking those drivers to do? The second building has a beautiful loading dock, but when it came into council, I warned them. This truck cannot get in. This swept path shows I'm about to take out 3 parked cars. No, the development went ahead. The street tree that I said shouldn't be there is gone, but the 3 parked cars are there. So guess what? After week 1, we had to go and move those parking bays, because otherwise we were going to make quite a mess of those parked cars. So when you're looking at the plans that are coming in, you need the assets that are outside the building line. It's really important. It's one thing to see those sweep paths, but if you don't know what's on the footpath, you've got a bit of a problem. Okay, now we get into some nitty-gritty. This is a actual building on a very busy corner in the city of Melbourne. It's just under 500 apartments, it's 50 stories. I won't tell you which of the solutions it actually has, but I will tell you what its choices were. If we had gone with traditional system, 240 litre bins, it would needed 415 of them, picked up once a week. So obviously that is not a good option, because it would take up a third of your ground floor space in bin storage. If we went for the smallest footprint we could possibly achieve in that bin room, we'd need 70 metres squared, it's not bad, but we'd need 20 1100 litre bins, but I would need that garbage truck to come 5 times a week and the recycling truck to come 5 times a week. That's 10 truck movements. If we used twin compactors, I need slightly more space because of the loading and the hooking area, so 78 metres squared. I'd only need 2 compactors, and I'd only need 1 pickup per week for garbage, 1 for recycling. But you do need extra height clearance. You need 5 metres, not 4. So how do you know what you want to ask for developers? What's the win-win here for council and developers? How much time is your council vehicle going to be sitting in this building picking up truck bins versus how much cost do we want to put on the developer for this extra height? This is a really important thing to understand. This is not about them and us. This is about the win-win. Okay. If we looked at just area versus vehicle movements. So the previous example was just one building size, 500. So across the bottom, different size buildings. The average building size coming into the Melbourne market is between, well, the average is about 600. Okay, 600 apartments is an average building. We're currently designing developments with in excess of 2,000 apartments, 4 towers, 1 block, right? Common basement. So the average is about 600 at the moment. We don't get much under the 350 mark. It just doesn't exist. It's not profitable for the developer. The blocks are big. So if you drop the collection frequency, right, once a week or twice a week or 3 times a week, you're going to need much bigger bin rooms. That's pretty straightforward. So where is that tipping point? When does the 5-day-a-week collection of bins, when does compactors come in? So looking at this, the blue and the green line intersect at about 500 apartments. If you dropped it to 3 collections a week, which is the red line, you're looking at about 250 apartments. That's the tipping point for when would you require developers to give you that extra metre of height, right? That's a 5 metre height clearance. It's a big area, but how much reduced truck movement do you actually achieve? What balance does your council really want? That loading dock, developers don't want 10 trucks a week in that dock. And if you send a separate truck for hard waste, cardboard, and charity, let's start adding up the total truck movements here. We've got pretty busy docks. If we looked at collection time, which is dollars for councils, and we looked at the number of bins and how long they were taking to be collected, so the collection coefficient there, the collection efficiency, every council is going to be a little bit different because we look at how far is that truck driving to empty the compactor, right? So I had a council come to me, they said, would you please review my guidelines? They wanted to introduce compactors at 100 apartments. I said, yeah, okay, so 10 cubic metre compactor, that's going to take you about 45 minutes to drive to tip it and 45 minutes to come back. An hour and a half to pick up the equivalent of 10 bins? I don't think so, right? You would be better off sticking with 1,100 litre bins, 10 of them, once a week. This is not an hour and a half, that's 10 minutes. So where is the balance? They went away and had a good think. We talked about how far they were driving, what was efficient for their trucks. And so we can see that about 300 to 400 apartments is the changeover when we're looking at time and cost to council, right? So this is measuring up the cost of the developer for the space versus the cost of the council to collect. And I'm a big advocate. If the council truck is already driving past the door, it should be picking it up. You don't want another private contractor to come in, okay? You need to think about if number 71 has a private collection and then number 204 has a private collection, and they're over on the same day, and we start looking at how many trucks are coming into these neighbourhoods. I live in one of those neighbourhoods. I've got truck curfews. So when I sat with my own council and they said, oh, we're going to go private collections for anything over 12 apartments, I went, no, I don't want that truck movement in my neighbourhood. Your truck's going past the door. Okay, this, the last part about appropriate design is it operationally viable? What are you actually asking the building managers to achieve? It needs to be clean, it needs to be odour-free. You need to have safe drop-off for your residents. The actual guys running around, driving around in the trucks and picking up bins, it needs to be safe for them to handle. They don't like vermin, they don't like dirty bins. They wear gloves, not just so that they're safe. Like, have you seen the state of some of these bins? So this is a building that has 4 towers. It's got over 2,000 apartments. Monday morning, because they didn't want to pay for a private collection on the weekends, we had in excess of 50 garbage bins. That wasn't a truckload. That's 1.5 truckloads. So the truck arrived, it filled, it went to the transfer station, it came back, and it half filled again. And on that same note, be really careful that you put into your development controls that you would like to limit it to 1 truck per stream per day. You don't want 2 garbage trucks. I was asked to review a building for somebody who was designed with the low profile truck, and the building had about 1,500 apartments across several towers. That truck needed to come twice a day, 7 days a week. That's 14 garbage truck movements, and let's just double that for recycling, so 28 truck movements. Do you want to live near that? No. That's not a good design. So, of course, in this case, we were really fortunate when we were approached to assist this building. We've redesigned it. They had the 5 metre height clearance, so we redesigned it. It's got 2 compactors. It still has its 4 carousels and its 4 towers. The cleaners are now not handling a sea of bins. The compactors in this case, because it's 2,000 apartments, are actually collected 3 times a week. So they used to have garbage recycled cardboard vehicles, so 15 trucks a week. Now they're down to 6. So it's a good outcome. The building manager and the body corporate of this building chose to spend the money on the compactors, 70,000 each. That's 2 wages. How many cleaners do you think we now not need to constantly shuffle these bins due to the improved design? Okay, so what's best practice? I think you're starting to get the picture. It's about getting the balance right. It needs to be a balance for the developer. It needs to be a balance for council. And it needs to be a balance for the residents. So you need to be very mindful of how much waste you're actually generating. You need to be careful of where you want to store it and what that layout looks like. Make sure you've included circulation space. You need to be able to get to those bins. And think about those collection contractors. Is it safe? Is it clean? Ramps. Bin rooms don't need to be on ramps. Be really careful of where you're trying to put tugs. And of course, these criteria need to be in your planning controls. So I would recommend that you stipulate what streams you want the developers to work to. Twin chutes, 4 floors. It's pretty straightforward as far as I'm concerned. I've seen too many buildings with diverters at 40 floors. That Tim Tam packet takes a very long time to float to the bottom, and by now the gate, after 10 seconds, has swung across. And if someone else presses garbage and you've dropped recycling, well, which one is it going to go to? 10 seconds is not a lot of time when you've got 60 floors and you're trying to drop waste, right? So think about the equipment that you're asking developers to put in or not to put into your buildings. I wrote the Frankston and the Maribyrnong guidelines. They've gone with 4 floors. City of Melbourne is about to modify it to 4 floors. It was 10. Bin sizes. Give your developers a little bit of choice. There are times and places for a 240. There are times and places for a 660. It fits through a standard width door. It's a good option if you're modifying an existing building. 1100s, yes, it's on 4 wheels. It's a little bit taller, so you actually get double the capacity from not much bigger footprint than a 660 if you actually look at the footprint of a 660. And have a look at your trucking distance so you can decide for each of your respective councils where's the tipping point for compactors for you, okay? Because they do have a loading dock that needs more space. I also have the choice that if you have medium-sized developments, you know, your 20 to 50s, why not have a bin room that opens onto the street? The bins never go out. The contractor pulls up, he fetches bins, he drives off. It's a good win-win for both residents. We've heard earlier about amenity. So bin rooms right on the curb, nicely screened, of course, for those urban designers in the room. On-site collection, again, 250 is really the minimum, but once you're sort of getting into that 400 play space, it's a no-brainer. And you'd be really aware of that contractor, private collection versus council collection. What balance do you want? And I think I'm done.